Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today with us on a Saturday evening. We're here with Usha Rao and Gautam Sonti, the directors of the film Our Metropolis, and we're absolutely delighted to have both of them here with us. We opened the link, with their help for everyone's viewing pleasure over the last a day and a half. And we hope that many of you have been able to catch the movie. And if you haven't, we've dropped the credentials of the movie on chat. So you can watch it post this session as well, tonight, as well as through the day tomorrow. So thank you, Gautam and Usha, for enabling this viewing for the audience and folks who are here today. Let me do a quick introduction, starting with Usha. Usha's path has crisscrossed and she's jumped several professions, from being an HR trainer, a teacher, a consultant, an anthropologist, as well as an independent researcher. And over the past 2 decades, she's been making sense of what makes a city and what development does, in quote, to our lives with them, in them. So Our Metropolis was her first foray into documentary filmmaking, and sound and image, she says, are central to the work that she does. And if you've seen the movie, there is some amazing work out there. You can read up more about her on www.usharao.in. Gautam, welcome. Gautam is a filmmaker whose films have traveled to festivals, far and wide, to be watched and distributed. He says there's just not one common thread that runs through all his films, but 3 of his films are about technology and society. And he's been in Bangalore for over 2 decades. So maybe hence the intersection between technology and society. He's also done a share of commissioned work in addition to documentary filmmaking. And you can read more about it at www.gautamsonti.in. So as we start off, I wanted to congratulate both of you on this absolutely wonderful film. There are moments that just jump at you through the viewing of the film. The emotions in the movie, especially, Vinay's passion, the citizens' tension on the street, Girija's helplessness, the anger that the poor karmikas have, and the deep sadness that one can actually feel in Malini losing her home. I wanted to ask, let's start with you, Usha, what triggered you to make this movie, and take us through some of the emotions that you as makers have gone through it. We'll start with you, Usha, and then over to you, Gautam.
Yeah. So, we started thinking about making, so we have to wind back to 2007, 2006, when Bangalore began seeing a lot of changes on the ground, whether it was, the IT boom had made the city much denser, bigger, and there was a spreading out of the city towards, it was bursting at the seams at that time. And Gautam and I were talking about making, and there was change in the air. They were shifting, things were shifting. And so we were talking about making a film about change as was experienced in the periphery of the city. And, because we here was a city that was going into sort of telescoping into this kind of modernity in a heightened way. So we were thinking we will, maybe look at some of what was going on in the periphery. But then come to 2007, we actually started seeing change on the ground within the city in a very obvious way. For instance, and this is a story we repeat at many discussions, that we were on the on MG Road, the boulevard was being dug up. And that was the moment I think we decided, look, we just need to do something. We need to, this is a big, huge moment in the city's life, and we need to enter it. So it was not rationally thought out. It wasn't something that, no, we just decided, hire a camera and start working. So that's in short. Because there was also, by then, there was also a lot of anxiety and angst with people because things were changing so quickly. There was a sense of unease and that you couldn't recognize a place you went in because everything overnight would change. So that was the kind of moment, which now come to think of it seems like we've got used to change in a certain way. So it was a real moment. Gautam can jump in.
Yeah, so no, I mean, my motivations to start were more or less the same. So let me not repeat that because, Usha has already spoken of it. But going from that initial start, initially we thought we'd just do it on NG Road. We thought we'd make a film about the construction of the metro on NG Road. And then we found, we met a lot of activists, some of whom we knew earlier, who are working on that issue, but also about several other things in the city, such as road widening, such as the expanding of the city into into the surrounding areas. And one of the things the metro was doing was going right into the periphery. Its initial rationale was to lessen the traffic within the city. But by going there, it wasn't so much taking people out as making it possible to have these apartment complexes outside or in the periphery of the city so people could come into the center very quickly. So we're not city planners and we're not people who can predict these things, but all the people we met seemed to feel that actually that will cause greater traffic rush within the city. So anyway, so then we decided to film those stories as well. Yeah, so I won't add anything to the initial part of the question.
Sure. So what we do is just quickly try and, Rajni, are you ready? We're going to try and play the trailer for some of those who haven't seen the movie and just to give them a little bit of a context of our discussion today. Rajni, do you think you can play the trailer or shall we do it?
I'll just take, need to try this because I'm trying to do this from our Metropolis website.
Yeah. If you like, I can see if I could play it from here and you could just share my screen. If I have the trailer here. No, I don't have the trailer. I only have the whole film, I'm afraid. So.
Trailer's on the side, yeah.
Is this visible?
Yep, yep.
Okay. Kindly mute yourselves. I think I will have to be unmuted.
Train arriving Mahatma Gandhi table. This train terminates here. Doors will open
Oh.
Looking at all the big buildings, the whole downtown feel of it, the metro coming up, it's difficult to believe that history actually happened here, but history did. To believe that, you need to make a huge leap of imagination and of faith. So close your eyes for 30 seconds while I dramatically try to transport you back in time. Close your eyes.
ಇದು ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೆ ನಾನು ಹುಟ್ಟೋಕ್ ಮುಂಚೆನೆ ಈ ಮನೆ ಇತ್ತು ಏನು ನನ್ನ ಡ್ರೀಮ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ನಡೀತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಈಗ ತರ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ ಗಾಳಿ ಗೋಪುರ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಸ್ ಟು
The metro to me signifies the most undemocratic use of executive. This is definitely
definitely a planned move to change the nature of cities, which is going to impact a whole lot of other communities dependent on the street for other users.
ನಗರದಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೀ ಮಾಲ್ಗಳಿಗೆ ಅವಕಾಶ ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. पूरा मिलकर एक गड़ा खोद के सब में उसमें दफन कर दो बस. आ रोड पक हो गया.
यहाँ तक था मेरा घर.
The expression I want to use in a letter was rascality of bureaucracy. You know, it actually fits the behavior.
Where it comes down to is that everything apart. How to move traffic, not people, how to move traffic. But there is more. Really, there's more. So, when does the street become a road?
As a place of either dwelling or movement.
You can open your eyes now.
Thank you, Rajni.
Was that okay? Because I was the only one unmuted and I couldn't check.
I think it's best viewed, individually and maybe on a larger screen. You can stop sharing now, Rajni. Thank you. Yeah, I think the movie experience is, absolutely different when you watch it on your own screen and a larger screen for sure. The streaming was a bit choppy, folks, so sorry about that. Please do go catch the movie itself, and then I think that would be a better experience for sure.
Also, the trailer is available over here. Well, I guess you must have circulated it, but there, it's available there.
Thank you, Gautam. So, as I watched the movie, I was constantly transported between that time and the present. And, they almost seem like parallel timelines, in terms of what is playing out now as well. New metro lines, lots of commons, lots of trees, more malls and high rises and helipads and what have you, right? Those 6 years, how were they for you? Because, you were so, you were connected to the city so intimately, and you saw it, through the lens and outside of it. What were those 6 years like for you? And as Bangalore went through its journey to be a world-class city. Gautam, for you first, please.
Okay. The sad truth is that many of the people many of the stories that we were following didn't end up very happily. Many of them lost their cases to the metro or to road widening or whatever it is. However, something like, I think 108 roads were to be widened. And over those 6 years, I think they ended up widening only about 8 roads. Part of that could be simply to do with just governmental inaction. But on the other hand, I think the protests by citizens, by the activists, probably put some brakes on that kind of development. So I think we're just so caught up in the whole thing and just following all of these people, Leo, Vinay, and all of them, and also all the other stories that are in Malini, that we sort of became. Their lives kind of took over ours in a sense. And there was a time when we were running to the MG Road metro construction at 2 in the morning, 2 and 3 in the morning, because we'd made friends with an engineer who was empathetic to our position. And we wanted to film, that plaza, that signboard, now showing signboard falling down. And we kept waiting for that to happen, and it didn't. And I think it was on the third night at 3 in the morning or something that we actually managed to capture it. Yeah, so I think it really, emotionally, we were very connected to the people who are fighting this kind of development, and our own emotions kept taking that same trajectory. When there seemed to be a kind of victory, we were also rather thrilled, and then though mostly there were not so many victories. It'll be really nice to see people's faces, and I noticed that Mrs. Azam had come on and now she's gone off. I'm not sure why, but it'll be really nice to see other people's faces also, so one can see reactions. Thanks. So because it is only a conversation, and not we're not screening something here. So yeah, go ahead.
Yes, it would be great for folks to start maybe using their chat boxes to put in their comments, or raise their hands if they want to participate in the conversation and ask questions. We will take questions that that are in the chat box toward the end. But if you'd like to say something, then please feel free to kind of raise your hand. You're most welcome to join the conversation.
Yeah, I think the way we had structured this was Sandhya had a few questions. Because she's the moderator, she went first. There's no partiality here. So if you have something, please button. I have a few questions to Sandhya once you're done.
Yeah, sure, Rajni.
So,
yeah.
No, I didn't want to upset the moderation. I was only saying it'll be nice to see faces. That's all.
Yes. I think people are trying to save bandwidth, because nowadays, when all the videos go on, those who are not on a good Wi-Fi or a broadband tend to lose the Zoom call. So I think if most of us are in a good place with good Wi-Fi, we should try and unmute, because I think Gautam, being a filmmaker, I think you really want to see the faces. And people's emotions.
Thinking to other people. It's nice.
I know.
But it's okay. I understand. Please.
Yeah. Sometimes we need to do that sometimes. Yeah. So.
I think the lockdown has got us so used to, I will not even wash my face and sit in front of my laptop for a Zoom session. And I don't want the camera coming on. I'm conscious about it. So, yeah. Sandhya.
So Usha, same question for you, right? About, the 6 years and how they were for you and how you saw the city then at the end of the movie and how you're seeing it today.
So again, a lot of what Gautam said is, it was a shared experience, so I will not repeat it, but we were extremely, we got drawn into it. And I think the one shift it was because we were seeing it so up close and intimately. There were many things that one didn't understand very clearly earlier about, say, for instance, how decisions are being made. So in some ways, it was a kind of a moment of, breaking the illusions about how things are done on the ground. So it just all, so the very little everyday acts that actually add up to this grand decision that affects so many lives. So it was also a period of learning about how these, I may sound very naive, but we tend to think of things like governments and bureaucracies as these, places where things are reasoned out, and a lot of those illusions broke, at least for me. So it was a very emotionally intense time, and that period is a little different from now. And I'll just address that question of how do you see it now? In some sense, that was a transition moment for Bangalore as a city. And we can take MG Road as a metaphor for that. Because, the things were at a slower pace. There was a lot of walking in the city. There was a kind of a familiarity that had grown over a long period. Of course, cities keep changing, but with the coming of the metro was part of a larger plan of expanding the city and making it into a metropolis, with large roads and link roads and those what they call ring roads, etc. And with that came a real change in the spatial design of the city as well, and how life is lived on the street, on the ground. So it was a moment of transition that we were actually watching. And that was a state of helplessness also. I think in some ways, there were people who were able to, our protagonists were able to make a dent in some areas they weren't. And so you could, so there was a sense of helplessness also. And there's no turning back the clock. Now we've got used to this. We've got not there is a status quo that has set in, and now we are not perplexed anymore. I'm making a generalization. When, as you say, the airport road is going to lose so many hundreds of trees, there is not that much of an outrage because we've lived through it.
It's thousands of trees, actually.
Hundreds, thousands of trees. And little stretches are losing so many trees. When you go down Hosur Road, Bomanahalli area, and you see entire buildings sliced off. In some ways, you've seen it. And so there is a sense of saying, this is how it is. This is how cities are made. So there is a certain kind of numbness that I think that has also set in. And I'm really glad to be in a group where, these things are coming back up to the surface, which the kind of work you all are doing. And so, it can also be a numbing process.
Oh, absolutely. Agree, Usha. We were at HPR today. There's a BDA park where, and a service lane where there's absolutely beautiful green canopy with tall trees on either side, all marked to be, felled for the airport line. And they're taking away a bit of the park as well. So we approached one of the citizens, and an elderly gentleman, we don't know him at all. And we just walked in and we said, "Uncle, do you know this is happening? The metro is coming. Your house is right in front of the park. So many beautiful trees that have been." He said, "Yeah, a few trees are going. Yeah, a few trees, And then I said, are the citizens aware? Are you guys planning to do something? Is there an RWA? I was so animated and excited. And he said, no. What can we do? We're all helpless.
So that what can we do? We actually saw that what can we do transformed into let's do something in those 6 years that we were filming. And I think, I think the what can we do is something that, is very often observed. But in these years, I think Gautam will also add to this. A lot of middle-class people who've never walked on the street in a single protest were out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And somehow they align themselves. I mean, everybody aligned themselves with a common cause. There were street vendors, there were people from Avenue Road who had small shops, there were middle-class activists, there were environmental activists, there are many people, there are middle-class people who are losing their homes, such as Malini. So somehow all of that came together during that period. Maybe if when and if Corona lifts, something like that might happen again. I haven't seen that happen, at least not in my memory, in Delhi, where I've lived for many years. I just wanted to say that you were speaking of RWAs, but oftentimes they're also hijacked. RWAs then are they're not aligned with the people they're supposed to be representing, and then those people who want to protest have actually no single platform to stand on. As Usha said, these group of citizens who came together, who called themselves Hasiru Suru, they provided that platform.
Yeah, we wish Vinay could have been on this panel with us today, but we will, get him back on soon in one of the sessions that we continue to plan to have as a series. So I think it would be interesting to hear from Vinay as well on his experiences with Hasiru. One of the other things that I was, very, very, it was so nice to see that the sound and the music, right? Such an integral part of the movie. There are moments when there are these subtle messages that are passed just using, sound and music, certain reactions, which, you don't use in words, you don't use in commentary, but you evoke through the use of sound and music. Tell us a little more about that.
So the music was actually done by a student of Usha's, or was he a student? No, but he's the son of a very close friend of hers, and I think his, the sound. So all of us worked on the sound, including the editor, and the editor has an important contribution to the sound. But it carries on the slight cheeky tone of the film. The sound is used to comment in that slightly cheeky way, in the way that the visuals do, in the way that the play with the visuals also does, like the rewind or the text that comes that repeats the lawyer's somewhat nonsensical bureaucratic statement. So the sound is kind of reinforcing that cheekiness or the disbelief in the official line.
And also the sound comes in, it also provides, it places, and again, as Gautam said, we worked very closely with the editor. And it is also, the sound is another layer of the narrative, because it adds to the emotional texture of because what we were seeing is also a sense of ruination. There's a city full of scaffolding, broken down buildings, a sense of actually something being completely churned up and flattened out even, and something completely unfamiliar coming in its place. So the sound has actually added to that feeling. So it has an emotive role to play so it's very much part of the.
Sure. I'm sure those who've seen the movie will absolutely relate to the wonderful use of sound and music. For those who haven't, you have to watch the movie. We will place the link and the password on chat. Rajni, over to you now.
Yeah, sorry, Nadia, just to add that the music is original music composed by Snehal Pinto and Anant Krishnan.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sorry, Anant Menon, yeah. Who were they were at points, they were in tears. So they were very much into this.
Yeah, you could make that out. I mean, the music was what was evoking those responses in case you were just laid back and watching it, right? So it made me go back and look at what time that was. I think we really could notice how the people who did the music have put their heart and soul into the entire topic. Yeah. So actually, I'm going to be a little bit of an activist here, taking tips from you, because we don't have Vinay here. For me, what struck while watching the movie was, hey, there were a lot of public consultations back then. They're not happening right now, is what went through my mind. But then I'm also someone who's digging into the the existing phases which are going on, the phase 2, Gottigere Nagavara line, and the other phases. And I'm looking at the DPRs and the EIAs. And there have been public consultations. It is very well documented in their documents. Metro documents it says who attended, what happened. So there's a summary there. And having been a person who started attending a few public consultations in the last 2 years, whenever I could, not just Metro, but other projects as well, I found it to be completely, to summarize, it looked like a check in the box for the project proponent, whoever it could be. And also on the part of citizens, not many citizens were eager to come and participate and give meaningful things. So, and then you land up in the project, in the consultation, which talked about in the paper notice, in the newspaper, it said 400 trees will be felled for this stretch of the metro, come for the consultation. And then you land up there and there's no map and there's nobody to explain to you what this is about. And that's how my experience has been. So I wanted to know, because you were in a couple of them. Number one, have things changed? Because it looked like at least they were consultative, right? And people were coming in there. What was your feeling? I mean, I know you were already immersed in the whole process. As a filmmaker, you also had to draw back and observe all the things that were going on. So my question is, do you think public consultations have changed over a period of time? Are they useful?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, go.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, I'll come in.
Okay, so I don't know whether they've changed. I would be surprised if they had. At that time, we did not find any of the public consultations to be genuinely addressing the concerns of the public. And as Leo himself says, during that, the consultation, supposed consultation in Jayanagar, you know, this was really, like you said, a checkbox, and you know, the RWA is also supporting the whole thing. A large number of the people over there, a large number of residents, I don't think were supporting the metro at all. Maybe the people who were, you know, who benefited from having the metro, or a large number of people who may have been politically aligned with the people who were pushing the metro. Maybe they were okay with it. But a larger majority, I feel, was against having the metro run through that particular road. They were much more concerned about having a tree-lined road that they could walk on. Many of them perhaps don't really use the metro because that's actually a very affluent neighborhood, and most of them probably take their own cars. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the way public consultations happen in many parts of the world. I don't know. But certainly the meetings that we filmed, we felt were not really happening because the concerns of the people there were being taken into account.
Yeah. And also we were also privy or witness to the way one of the big concerns that the activists, Hasru people, Vijay, Vinay, Leo, all of them, Vinay not so much at that point, but Vijay and Leo and all of the rest, was that notices were not adequate. Maps were not displayed at places that were convenient for people to view. Secondly, even information about the alignment was not made public. You remember, Gautam? He had to get it from Delhi or something. So even alignment details were not made available. And also, you could not file an RTI and get it. So as far as that goes, information goes, it was as opaque as it is now. Regarding the consultations itself, some of the what we've used in the film is one consultation in Nanda Road, which happened, which, as you know, was a complete, there was an inner group and an outer group. So it was not a public consultation. It was basically a kind of I don't know what it was, but it was not a consultation because people were not allowed to ask questions, and some of them were even threatened. And we were at other meetings where, for instance, when they wanted to ask questions or even propose alternatives or even make presentations, they were shut up. We haven't used that in the film. So there was this complete silencing that was happening. So I don't know how it is now, but at that point, this was what the story was. And so there was very inadequate, it was not really, it didn't appear to be a genuine, let's sit down and talk kind of consultation.
Did that answer your question, Rajni? I don't know.
Rajni, are you on mute?
She seems to be. But carry on.
While she's coming in. But,
okay.
You know, not much has changed. For example, for the phase 2A and 2B lines to the airport, the DPRs have not been put into public domain, especially for the phase 2B line. Our RTIs have been not responded. First appeal hearings, they tell us that it does not have to be in the public domain. Apparently, DPR is a prized document, which means that they've spent a lot of money in putting it together, and they don't want somebody else stealing their ideas or something of that sort, right? But without a DPR, how is one to really make anything out of the project, right? How do you get a holistic view of the project? So, you know, alignment maps are not in public domain. So we do see a complete lack of transparency from Metro even now. And, you know, we've tried even writing to the banks to see if, you know, they would interject and somehow allow these documents to be put in public domain. In one part of the movie, there is a BMRCL representative, I presume, who is giving a presentation, and you know,
he's the PR person. PR.
Ah, okay. And he uses the word public, I think, 4 times in a very short span of time, and he talks about public welfare. So where is the public, you know, and the public welfare in this process? So it's kind of you know, just mere words and not really intent or action.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go.
No, please, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Malini had this she had a quip. She said, Nimma metro, Namma metro alla. That was what she would say, that it's your metro, it's not our metro. Because where is the public? Where are individuals in this? And that is actually one of the themes that is there in the film, even in the other scenarios, whether it is Nutan and the agricultural university and the road that goes through it, or whether it's the street. So that seems to be the kind of, it is the question of public good is used in all sorts of ways, and also dispensed with, because so that is a central question of the film also.
Yeah, thank you, Sandhya, for chipping in. I couldn't unmute suddenly. I was here all through. So yeah, things haven't changed. Notices we still see come in 1 or 2 mainstream newspapers. There's a PIL on the Tree Act, tree preservation, which has kind of led to some amount of transparency, accountability. So there's a notice on the website as well, but it is still not completely inclusive. Like we've been trying to get the airport line, which is the current accelerated in the news, you know, pushed from the top. Like we know in April, just in the beginning of the second wave, this airport line was approved by the central government. We had the PM and the chief minister advertise it as the next big thing for Bengaluru. And this line and the details are not yet out. Like we don't have alignment or maps for the phase 2B, the line that goes to Metro. Notices are there for the tree felling. It's independent of, you know, the project itself. Right. So these are questions activists now are also asking. I mean, people like me have been writing to the forest department. There's a petition online. People on the outer ring road are probably not aware, like you said, or they're locked in to their homes. I even heard that some people in, you know, they had a meeting and they said, you know, we will make sure things happen in a better way in this area. We will not allow what happened elsewhere to happen here. So I'm not sure where that, you know, confidence or whatever is coming in unless we dig deep into what happened. What fundamentally went wrong? Was it the planning itself? Like Yogada is just building on my question and saying, citizens who are not local to a particular area, when they come to oppose a certain project, they've been discredited. You are not from here. I think that's also in the film where, you know, the consultation time. I live in Jayanagar, by the way. I wasn't in India at that time when that consultation was happening. And I saw that this is what happens in every place. You are not from here. You're not a local. You won't be affected. So don't speak. So then who is the person who should decide for that stretch, that line, this city, this country, right? But I think we've seen that happening a lot, discrediting you because you're not from here. Anything you want to say on that?
Except many of those people were from there.
Yeah, because he can just say that and he's held to no account because he said it.
And the other thing is, even if you're not from there, you might be using that park. It's a park that's open to all Bangaloreans. It doesn't belong to only Jayanagar Association. There's no reason why somebody from another part of the city can't protest. I just want to narrate very quickly a funny story connected to what Sandhya was saying about the DPR. Leo or ESG had published, not the whole DPR, either a portion of it or maybe just the alignment, I'm not sure, on their website. And they got a legal notice from the Metro that they had stolen their copyright, that it is copyrighted material that they're not allowed to put out. And the Metro itself did not put it out because we were trying to get a copy of the alignment and we were not able to at that time. In fact, apparently there was one copy inside the Metro office, but how do you get in? It's not easy to get in for most people. We happened to know somebody who knew the PR person, so we managed to get in and film that half a day. But it wasn't, if one just lands up and says, I want to go to so-and-so room to see, I don't think that's going to be possible. It wasn't for us, at least. So yes, there was a complete lack of transparency and of democracy in the decision-making. So personally, I'm actually, that was primarily Usha's motivation also for going ahead with the film, but in part she's also connected to an older Bangalore. And so there is also a certain attachment to Bangalore as it was. I don't have that. I shifted here only 20 years ago. So I was here only for 6-7 years when we started talking of this film. So my motivations were entirely, at being able to examine and decipher this, the way in which this lack of transparency is created.
Yeah, and I would say that, although I am from Bangalore and I was not making this film out of nostalgia. I think it was also to understand who are these people who take these decisions? How are these decisions made? What affects, how are cities made? What happens? Who are the people who push for a certain kind of development? And what happens when, on the ground? So it was really that kind of questioning that that drove, I think, but that was a main motivation.
Yeah, I think in one such project consultation, when I asked a question that why didn't you have a consultation before? I mean, before you put out the tenders and did everything. This is for a road project. Actually, a couple of us have even filed petitions and somebody has gone to court on this. So there is a Bengaluru surrounding road expansion project. Right, we went in, so we didn't know there was this project that existed until in the newspaper in December 2019, there was talk of, a few trees being cut far away in Mandur, Attibele, and unconnected activists. We attended and we got to know these were huge heritage trees going for road expansion. And the locals said, Navu enu madodu. So we landed up there just to understand what are these trees. And then we unearthed a project. So we actually had the environmental engineer from, the project company, which is KRDCL, come and show us a map. And then we said, oh, this is actually a project. Can you tell us more about this project? And initially he was willing to, but then when he felt that we're digging and asking uncomfortable questions on why is this road being widened? I mean, is this the only option? He was like, no, I can't share this with you. But then we filed RTIs and later they put it up on the public domain. So you do get something called the detailed feasibility report. But that doesn't talk of, why did this project come up? It just says roads are today X. It does some estimation 2X. And all the roads are being widened so that people from surrounding areas of Bangalore and the suburbs can get to the airport quicker, right? And that struck me when I saw your movie. I'm like, okay, 12 years down the line, we want everyone to get to the airport quicker. So nothing has changed. I mean, bottom line, nothing seems to have changed. And that's where, when I saw Vijay in the movie, he says the whole question seems to be they're trying to move traffic and not people, right? And this is something that has been asked, and now we know much more, right? It's now 2021. We have much more data from across the world, and even within Bangalore, we know that Outer Ring Road didn't decongest Bangalore, right? Outer Ring Road became another Bengaluru. In fact, more unplanned Bengaluru coming up. Electronic City Road, Main Road, Hosur Road expansion didn't become, decongesting and getting people faster to E-City. I thought we've learned our lessons, but we haven't. And we continue to do that with more and more ring roads for Bangalore. For other cities, it's long roads. Like Bombay, I think they keep going into the sea. They will keep building bridges on the sea link and whatever. So each city is coping with this whole thing. But metro seems to be like a international lobby, right? I mean, did you experience anything like that? Was there any, because now it's known, there is an international lobby of people pushing for metro as the solution for green, clean urban transport. Was it there then? And what did you feel about it then? Now that we know more, is there something that we can do to question and to get more information, is what I would like to ask Usha and Gautam. And yes, I will stop asking my questions and take questions from people. And feel free to type in your name if you want to ask the question yourself. Thank you.
Some have typed in an asterisk. They are the ones who will ask their own questions, Rajni. Okay. Yes, go ahead, Usha.
Okay. Gautam, you want to go ahead?
No, you start.
Okay. So we got a sense that this is, like with just a stroke of luck, we managed to get into the metro on the very last day. That particular MD was retiring. And we didn't know he was not retiring. He was being shunted out because the regime had changed. The election results were out and the new government was taking over. So in a sense, we were just plain lucky. But one got a sense through the filming and through our interaction that it is extremely opaque, and that that we don't know what is happening on the ground, because it's not out of oversight, but it is by design. That one got a very quick sense of, and very quickly also they started not allowing us to do some things. So we understood that they didn't want us around. So at that point, we didn't know that there was a huge, I didn't personally know that there was a huge lobby out there, but which one discovered later, but that the stakes were very high, and that it is, so no amount of protesting or logical reasoning or even intelligent alternatives being posed would actually shift anything. And it was very much linked to the image of the city as a global or a world-class city, because it was there on all the posters, it was there on all the, world entrepreneurs meet, global investors meet that happened in 2008, 2009. So it was all over. So it was part of this image of a branding of Bangalore. And I think so that that was very there for us to see.
And visually, you do see when the metro pulls in that last scene, or the last but one or two scenes, you see people from Korea and Japan, and because it was also funded by those countries, funded or given loans by those countries. So you do see some obviously high up executives, because they've been able to get to that platform much before the others, while the general public is being pushed into a line. But yeah, we haven't gone into the details of the different kinds of foreign collaborations and funding and loans. The film is more like the story of, so it's a narrative, and people like Growthwatch and ESG, of course, they put out all the facts. But the stakes were high, as Usha said, and it wasn't possible for any one individual to change things.
And that public consultation was an eye-opener, no, Gautam? So-called public, just the sheer the use of even threat to keep people quiet, which we witnessed.
I'm going to be back in half a second.
Okay, sir. Okay, yeah, got it.
We'll have Yogada and someone else.
Sanjeev
put in an asterisk.
Yeah, Sanjeev wanted to go next.
Yes, Sanjeev.
Shall I? Yeah, Sanjeev and then Yogada. And I can, it's there in the chat box, but I can read it out for everybody. So someone is not able to see the chat. The questions that people have typed in, Monica and Abhishek. Okay, that'll go, I'll go next. Yeah. Sanjeev, are you there?
Sanjeev, you don't need to be unmuted. You can unmute yourself. Nobody, I mean, that control is not with us.
Well, thank you. But it just said that the host had the controls to unmute participants. I tried a couple of times, but thanks anyway. Couple of questions actually. For Usha.
Okay, this is strange.
It's fine now.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you can hear me now, so I'm quite certain that it's sorted. There are a few building blocks to giving this whole concept direction, right? First of all, there is a reach out, and that's where I'd put filmmakers, theater practitioners, and a lot of people who take the message out to the people, which is one aspect of it. There is another aspect of it, which is what is our legal recourse as citizens to take some action. And then there is the activists who are drumming up support, because it's all very easy to get lost in emotions, and all of us go through these ebbs and flows of emotions where you can get passionately angry about something that's happening to a city that I've lived in for 40 plus years of my life, right? So this is more to Usha, and where do these lines blur? Because there is a bit about saying that you've done a fantastic film that brings a message out that will hopefully be there up on the media for people to see. There's so much of noise that we all have. Lousy number of forwards that keep coming in. Yesterday's newspapers, today's Bonda rapper, and so many things of the sort, right? How do you get above the noise is one. The second thing is, where do you draw the line and say Leo and ESG will now take over? And the other bit is, how do you coordinate something like this? Because as somebody who will say, if it's not coming outside my house, I'm okay to commiserate with somebody and say, oh, I feel sorry for you, and I'll put something up and sign an online petition. But I will do sweet nothing until it literally comes outside my house, and I'll go pick up a hockey stick if push comes to shove, right? And I'll get thrown in behind bars. But these are all extremes, right? How do you demarcate these lines? How do you decide that you will handle the messaging, somebody will do that? Because in a room full of 5 people, sometimes it's difficult to get consensus. And here we're talking about an ever-growing population in our city with no limits on who keeps coming in and how we manage that. But that's for another time and another rant. During the course of this making of this film, you would have seen all of this, right? What's the creative or the progressive way to suggest to people that this is what we should possibly be doing?
So actually, we have a very limited role. We, as filmmakers, watched what was going on. We were in it because we were filming, and we were involved in it. And at the end of it, we have a story that talks about what was happening to the city, how did it affect people on the ground, and what did some of them do about it, and what transpired. So so just to also clarify that these are not logical. We didn't go out and have a consult with everyone there and say, listen, we'll take care of this. It wasn't like that. So all of us need to do what we are able to do. So if we are able to make a film, we do that. There's somebody else who's has the ability or the perspective and the skill to actually work out a very well thought out PIL as a strategy. So they do that. So I think all of us ultimately, I'm just answering it in a very general way. I think all of us ultimately jump in and do whatever comes to us in a way that we are able to, that comes deeply from us, and in a way that we can be effective. So there can be no one planned strategy as such. So it's not like a election campaign where someone says, okay, we'll take care of the media and someone else do. It's not like that. This was like a churning that was happening. And there were artists who wrote, there were novels that came out about Bangalore at the same time. N number of fiction came out about, and all the characters were grappling with change in this way that was keep making them discombobulated, out of place. So I think I don't even know if I can answer your question. I think the only thing we can do is keep our eyes on something like parity, equity, and something that is just. And we have to keep pushing for making a better system. That's the top question, whether we do it by telling a story that brings out the emotions of what happens to people, or we actually write a piece which is very powerful and moving about what is happening, or you put together, bring a whole bunch of people together and make a PIL. I guess it's, as long as your intent is something that is a good one, and when I say good, I don't mean as a one that takes everyone to a better place. I think that's all. You have to, each one of us has to do what we can from where we are and how we relate to what is happening in our world. I don't know if that answers your question at all, but I mean, that's all. So the noise you have, of course, there's a lot of media noise, but I think something that, after all of you are here, you all watched the film and you came, you must have probably got some 10 invites for different things. But so I think that when we look for something, we'll find it and we'll choose the right thing to actually pay attention to. But it has to have a story, which I guess as filmmakers, we told a story that has actually, I think, touched quite a few people and moved them to action in different ways. And in the process of filming also, like a couple of people actually became activists in that process as well, as we were watching them. So, Gautam, you want to add something?
I'd like to add that, I think Usha also feels this way. Certainly, I don't see myself as taking a message out. I mean, I don't have a message to take out. Who am I to give a message? I'm not somebody who has, I'm not I don't see myself as an expert who's taking a message out. The film is an expression of my feelings and what I went through that period, and the people I felt empathetic to, the people I felt were making sense also, the people who as far as the second part of your question goes, about how do you make that happen, I think, there are people who, first of all, I think it's one ought not to be so cynical as to feel that nobody will come out. Actually, a lot of people came out who are not necessarily connected with that one stretch of land or with the other places that they were fighting. And they're not they're not being paid by any organizations to come out. It's not their profession in a sense. It's something that they just felt deeply for, so they decided to come out and protest. And ultimately, what happens in one part of the city also affects what happens in another part of the city. So today, my road may be being broken, but tomorrow, a road in another part of the city may be being expanded and their building may be going. So you set the tone for the way in which the city is being changed. And if you stop it in its tracks right in the beginning, then there's a greater chance that that the rest of the development will happen more equitably. But really, I won't say that we had a great part in that whole movement, other than filming and then displaying what we've in a sense, it's also like it's a subjective documentation of the transformation of that period. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and it carries the stories of people who you'd never hear in the public domain. Nobody writes about these people. And so it's a film that carries those and our own, and we carry them because they make, like Gautam said, made sense to us. So we felt empathetic. And yeah, so and it was not a very rationally thought out thing. It was like you go with what's happening in your gut when you're making a film also. Maybe there are others.
Nor are we pretending to be, sorry, I was just going to say, nor are we making the claim to be objective, rational observers. Yeah. It is very much a subjective thing, and you connect with it if you are also, moving in that direction, and then, or even if you're not, if something, I mean, whatever you see on screen is, you'll connect to it if there's something within you that feels somewhat similarly.
And Gautam also, maybe we can say this as well, that at some points we became collaborators because people would call us when there was a threat. For instance, when Hanmanta wanted to go to the slum board, or when they were being cleared off the pavements because the camera was there, the police were not letting go with their sticks. So in some ways they would call us and say, please come, because there was a sense of that if there's a camera that is sympathetic or empathetic, then it's transparent to that extent. So yeah.
Hopefully with mobile phones at every nook and corner, now citizens feel more empowered. I can also capture this and go back. Sanjeev, would you like to introduce yourself? Do you want to say anything more?
Well, I just don't, there's many people on the panel. I'm sure they have a lot of questions as well, but I've been a citizen of Bangalore for 40 plus years now, studied here, grew up here. So I've seen my city evolve from me using that so-called outer ring road 15 minutes from Koramangala to ITPL to now taking me 15 minutes to get onto the damn outer ring road. So I understand a few of those things and I feel for it very closely. Like I said, I'm riding high on emotions on a few things, but it's about how you channelize these energies to do something constructive and not just fan those emotions.
I think it's, I mean, I'm not someone who can give advice. I'm very new into activism. I've been in IT, and from 2 years, I actually started out as a climate activist, digging deep into the climate science and going into, public spaces, colleges, talking about the environmental crisis. But then I also knew that I had to stay local and understand what's happening here. And that's how I started getting involved and volunteering for a couple of, NGOs or people who were in the movement, either talking about the metro or the trees or the lakes. And that's how I was able to learn and connect with more people. And I think me and Sandhya met at one such forum. And since then, we've tried to, make noise and get more people interested in that's how we met Vidya a couple of months later. So I think our attempt has been that if more and more people can dig deeper than the surface, deeper than the TRPs, and deeper than what the fake news and things come, and then demand, like I want to read out Mr. Vijendra Rao's message here, that it's interesting to see the contrast between urban and rural governments in Karnataka, because village governments, the panchayats are becoming more consultative and not less. And whereas here, the ward level committees or even the MLAs are not consulted by the metro, because the metro is overarching, right? It's a central government and the government of Karnataka initiative. Yeah,
okay. Sorry. It's a special body. It's not even central.
Yeah, so it seems to have taken a superpower of its own, not just central and state, right? So that's where we started understanding, and maybe that's what you can do, and we can sync up. Sandhya is probably going to put up a form at the end of it, because we have been trying to work on the Reach 6 as well as the Outer Ring Road metro line to understand where are the documents, what is it, what has been done so far, so that we can get back, because they are now asking us for public consultation responses, right? Mm-hmm. How do I respond if I'm not informed enough? That has been my question as an ordinary citizen, trying to dig and get documents and do that. So I'll move to Yogita then. Yogita, kindly unmute and ask. Thank you, Sanjeev.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And thank you, Growthwatch, for organizing this. And
yeah. And yeah, sorry, someone had just watched the film and they responded.
Unable to unmute.
Vidya, can you help her on this?
No, I can only prompt her, but she has to unmute. Yes.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much for making this movie. I've also been like quite new to basically engaging with the city a little more actively, and I'm so happy that all of these resources and so much of hard work is available to us. We just watch it for 1.5 hours, but it's so impactful, and I'm really thankful to both of you and the whole team, whoever was involved and everyone who participated in the movie, to make it what it is. And I have two questions. So one is regarding your experience with the whole governance, like the decision making process. Like, if there is, do you think it's a case, like you said, there's a vision for a world class city and like a smart city, and you suddenly start thinking of like this tech, and then there are very few trees. You don't really see street vendors on the road. When you think, you see like clear roads and like cut out pavements and everything, basically everything that is there, that whole image. And so do you relate that mindset with incompetence and like a lack of understanding of what our Indian context of cities is in government officials? And or is it like a case of like, for the lack of a better word, like malice, just like there are a few corporates who are going to give me money, and I'm just, and my superiors are on my head, my hands are tied, and I'm going to do what they're saying? Or is it a combination of both? Like, what exactly is happening? So this is my first question. So I have one more question, but do you want to answer this first, or like, should I just tell both?
Maybe one at a time. I don't know. It's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ask both. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. My second question was related mostly to like some parts in the movie where we're showing these old buildings where like Churchill stayed, and this is the church where he went to, and all of the colonial history of Bangalore, and which is there in the architecture, which was there. So like, is it do you, I mean, I found it a little ironic that we're showing all of these things, and again now we're looking at the West to give Bangalore its image and its brand. So what are your opinions on that? If I don't know if I came off as confusing. Yeah.
Fine. It's fine. So Gautam, would you like to go ahead?
About the first question, I'll only say that it's really a case of whose metro is it, or whose city is it, and I think that and that's a phrase that was coined by the activists of that time, not Namma Metro but Yar Metro, and I think that is very apt. In fact, whose city is it? And you were speaking of street vendors and they're being displaced. And is it out of malice or is it out of incompetence? I think there's a full plan. It's completely, the city is being made for, not for street vendors, it's being made for other people, people in power, people with influence, and everything, all the decisions that go towards the making of that city arise from essentially the answer to that question. Whose city are we building? For whom are we building that city?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is a street vendor not an equal citizen? According to our constitution, she or he is, but it doesn't seem to be on the ground the case.
Yeah. So this idea of there is a certain kind of glamour and enchantment in a certain kind of city which is associated with a first world kind of a city, which is rational, clean, everything is sleek, everything is ordered, there is no mess. So in a sense, we're looking at life on the street as mess. And one of the interesting things about the metro is it takes you above the mess, where you're gliding over the city. You're not actually engaging with the city at all. You're going from point A to point B without actually being in the city. So is it incompetence? Is it malice? I think partly it is the interesting thing about, I think, bureaucracies is that it's a job to be done. So nobody is thinking about, if I take this decision, it's both things. Part of it is, if I take this decision, who's it going to affect? How is it going to affect? Stays out of the equation because you have to push that file. The second thing is that if a city is remade, there's construction, land is made into real estate. And wherever there is real estate, there's money to be had. Wherever there's construction, there's money to be made. So there is a very concrete financial aspect to it as well. So, so it's not entirely indifference or malice in that sense, but it's, I think, a very kind of there are some advantages. And again, you're imagining the city for a certain kind of citizen. And Gautam opened this topic. So it is a certain kind of citizen. In our case, it would be, you know, someone who's in a high-tech industry, who needs to get from place A to place B really quickly and then go to the airport real fast so that they can take that flight out. So you're imagining the whole city in through the eyes of somebody who you idealize. And that person may not even be real, actually. It might just be a ideal. So, and which is equal to progress, which is equal to the city has arrived. So it is like a phantom kind of a, you know, it's a phantom scenario which is imagined, which has very real and horrible consequences on the ground. I mean, I can go on about this, but I'll stop. But to answer very quickly, and what was the second question? What was your second question?
Yogada?
Street vendors. What was your second question? So the street vendors were removed for the so-called city beautification, because wherever there's street vendors, there's a, you know, it's considered messy, but actually it's not. And that street vendors actually provide services for a large population of people who cannot afford to go. So it is what is very, you know, often called gentrification, where, you know, everything is made, you know, like it's high brand, you know, certain kinds of branded stores only, where, you know, the stores have to look a certain way, and you negotiate it in a certain way. So it's all about being part of a new kind of a citizen in a new kind of a city. So it's, I don't want to go on because there's lots to get that can be said about it, but this is just a very quick kind of a response.
Yeah, thank you. My second question was regarding the colonial history of Bangalore. And like, I personally found it a little ironic that now again we are looking at the West to get a brand or an image of the city. And at the same time, now we're thinking of even like conserving what was there before. So I'm not against that. Every city has, or every place has gone through whatever, like, I mean, invasions and like a colonial rule and all of that. But I just found it a little ironic that we're again trying to conserve what was there before, and but we're also trying to turn it into what the West is right now.
So when you say we are trying to conserve the colonial history, but who do you mean by we? You mean the city government or the activists, or who?
Yeah, I think I'm referring to the citizens and the activists who find value in what was there before.
But surely the citizens should be consulted before it's broken down, no? I mean, the decision to go ahead and break down certain structures, the face of the city should not be left to 3 or 4 or whatever, 100 officials. Surely a much larger citizenry should be consulted before you go ahead and do that. I mean, I think the protest was entirely about the lack of participatory decision-making not so much nostalgia for a British Bangalore.
Yes. Yes, and the boulevard is also not a nostalgic place in that sense, the Metro Boulevard, which a lot of people were against. It is also an open space. It's an open public space where you could stroll, you could sit, have kadle kai, you could, I don't know, you could just hang around, but you can't do any of that now. It's only a certain kind of orderly person who's allowed to go in. There's a security guard there. You can't just hang around.
Also, just to say, there was a certain amount, just again to address Yogita, your first question, there was also, and I mean, this is an assertion made by many of the people who are activists at that time, and one can't but agree when you look at what was happening. There was also a falsification of much that has happened, not just removal or not putting out sufficient information, but also falsification. One of those was, to take the example of that road, the metro, to the airport, sorry. That is the road widening of Avenue Road, so that people can get to the airport quicker. See, they would have had to take only 3 kilometers more they would have had to go if they had to go around Avenue Road as they have to now, instead of through Avenue Road. And the airport itself is some 40 kilometers or something, or 35 kilometers from the other end of Avenue Road. Now, instead of 35 kilometers, you travel 38. Big deal. I mean, 1 lakh people get their livelihood from that place. So, the real reason, according to them, was that they wanted to remove certain parts of the city, and this metro is a good way to do that, because it's hard to question the metro. It's hard to question this thrust towards a global, shiny new city, and also it's a central government thing. So it's harder for people of Bangalore to protest and prevent it from happening.
And also, just to add one more thing, Bangalore has no heritage laws, by the way, unlike other cities.
Mm-hmm. Unlike Bombay and Delhi.
Yeah, we don't have. And as Gautam rightly pointed out, the protest was about lack of transparency and the and livelihoods attached to certain older places in the city. And trees certainly were heritage for people, because when people, old trees were seen as living heritage, and it's also documented. Yeah, so yeah. And by the way, that's Churchill's bungalow went years ago. It went like many, many years ago. And the Bible Society or whatever was in its place.
Thank you. And Yogita, does it answer?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. So I think the problem, Yogita, we've been working on that traffic, road expansion, answering, tree felling and road expansion is not the solution. Metro is not the solution. This continues to stay. I mean, they've been talking about road widening and getting to the airport faster even 13 years ago. So, yeah. Can I request, I think we have Asha here who wants to ask a question.
Abhishek was before Asha, I think.
Abhishek, I think it's, Vidya, I would like you to respond. I think it's more like, is there going to be a campaign, a movement? I would not.
No, but does he want to articulate it? Please check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, so I've unmuted myself. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so my question is that rather than have, groups of people or organizations run after these documents or whatever important, consultative decisions that need to be required, can it all be, forced by the court to kind of, everything in one place? Whether it's the property acquisitions, the tree felling, the DPR, the EIA, the alignment, the maps, everything. Because what happens that, throughout the movie, I was like getting the feeling that, you're having to run for this document, or this is not available to you, despite it being a public project, right? The BMRCL is doing this on public land. Everything is public. So is there something, because even the metro line again to the airport is again, we are going to the same rigmarole that we are running for this document, for this thing. We're having to approach the courts. So does anybody have any idea that, is this a possibility to force? Because I'll give you an example. Just about 2 weeks back, the Bangalore Environmental Trust, I was reading an article in the Deccan Herald that because they actually petitioned the court for the stringent implementation of the Tree Act, right? Which is after which the BMRCL actually started taking afforestation and tree transplantation very seriously, right? Can the courts actually force the state government and the BMRCL to actually act more responsibly in this matter? And how would they go about doing this? What is the best way?
So I can answer, and Gautam, please come in. A small part of your question. At the end of this 6-year period, when there were a lot of PILs that were filed by Hasru Usru and ESG together about tree felling with regard to road widening and the metro. And at that point, the High Court did actually say that you have to consult them. And that you have to consult them before any felling is required, is done. So that is one thing. And that, the scenario we see, that special committee, that was also set up to evaluate the impact of environmental impact.
Okay.
But as we saw, that didn't really work too well. But the High Court did actually say that Hasru Usru has to be consulted. And I don't know what the state, Gautam, you have any idea what the status of that is? Or
status of which one? What?
That High Court had said they have to consult Hasru Usru after they filed that PIL about the...
Right.
So,
no, I'm not sure what the status is. I can't imagine it's the same.
Yeah.
What happens to these special committees also, again, this is what we're told, we're not lawyers, is that they constitute one committee, and if the decision of that committee is not to the liking of the government, they constitute a second committee. So they go on doing that till they get a decision that is favorable to them. Even within that committee, the chairperson was much more in favor of the governmental position, and there were 3 from their side and 3 from the activist side. So and the chairperson also had a vote. So. It was a foregone conclusion what would happen. Quite often also the courts were, the activists felt, not very sympathetic to their position. And, the metro people would come sometimes, or the road widening would come and cut the trees at night. And by morning, because half the trees had been cut, it was almost like a fait accompli. So then the court would say, now it's gone this far, why stop it? Let's go further. So that happens too. Leo, at least during that period, spent half his life there in the court, and he's constantly fighting. And I'm sure there are many others like him, many younger people, Vinay now, who are doing this.
Mr. Devre's filed a PIL.
Mr. Devre. So a lot of these things are available on the ESG site, as I'm sure you're aware, and maybe now on the Growthwatch site also. So maybe not only in one place, but these documents are available in 2 or 3 sites. 2 or 3 organizations are taking the pains to document these things. But I'm not somebody who knows exactly what is available where. But
yeah,
I think that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So Rajni was asking me to come in, I guess, from all of us, in a sense. Sandhya has put out a form and said that, we would like to really go ahead with a campaign on how the metro must be accountable. The thing is that the courts, as we all know, are really no panacea for all the ills of the city. And I guess there is a push and pull as to, one city view and how we should go, just like Usha was describing, and the other, which is more of a grounded approach. Each thinks theirs is the best, and somehow courts seem to go more with the official or the governmental version. So it needs constant support, I mean, constant pushing and struggling and bringing up those voices. And it's just not about trees, as somebody mentioned, Mr. Devare and BET is pushing the tree PIL. What it has done is it's instituted a process. So the Metro will go and put in their application to the DCF PBMP or the CCF Bengaluru Urban. And they will receive the application, put out a public notice, give you 10 days to respond. And that's all. Then it just goes through whatever BMRCL wants. Because of, all this litigation in the courts, all the activism on the ground, now they'll say, okay, we will translocate so many trees. And what happens to those trees then? And everyone's happy. Oh, 120 trees are not going to be chopped and felled and decimated, but are going to be lovingly picked up and put somewhere else. And some others are happy that all the trees that will be chopped, oh, there will be 10 planted instead of that one tree felled. But planted where? They're mandated to be planted in the same area so that we can benefit of the oxygen. Right? And we all know that these are age-old trees that really deliver so many more, so much of a range of what they call ecological services, but basically oxygen and all of that is good for us. You go and plant it somewhere else, and Metro is doing it. So much of compensatory afforestation here and there, away from where our lungs are, away from the city where we spend time, away from the city streets that are ours. Then how does it help us? I'm sorry. So Asha is putting in a question, and we must let Asha also speak up. She has been a foremost activist and a women's activist for a very long time. I think, Asha, I would throw a challenge to you. Together with Usha and Gautam and all of us, we need to have a women's perspective of what we want our capital city of Bengaluru to be. It mustn't be just Namma Metro. It should be really Namma City, Namma Uru. So yes, but Usha, if you wanted to say something, and then Asha.
No, let her go ahead. I'll come in later.
No, actually, I had, posed this question. I'm sorry, I still haven't seen the film, which I will, since it's going to be there till the 15th of August. But I was just wondering to what extent the film has really sort of, focused on the lives of the poor who would be kind of, displaced. But in the answers that both Usha and Gautam, were sort of giving, that has been addressed. And, my plea is all being that there is a lot of hue and cry about the cutting of trees, which certainly needs to be done. But at the same time, what's happening to the lives of people who get displaced, often that doesn't get the kind of focus, particularly in metros like us, like the Bangalore, where you have urban citizens, more focusing much more on the environment, which is critical, but then lives of the poor. That needs to be underlined. So that is really my plea. And to the question that Vidya has raised, yes, I completely agree. In fact, of course, now the women's movement has started looking at these issues. And because women's rights and climate change, there is a lot of correlation. And in fact, one of the largest movements to protect the trees was the Chipko movement, which was really, led by a woman called Kamla Bhen, but invariably it was always Sundarlal Bhoguna, whose name used to be mentioned. Like we all know, women who contribute never get acknowledged the same way as men. This is with due respect to the men over here, but this is the ground reality. Whether it is the freedom struggle or any other struggle, women who play and contribute equally never get the equal recognition.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. So Asha, do watch the film because there's some spectacular women protagonists in it. And we have an equitable city has to be equitable on all grounds. And one of the nice things, or one of the positive things that happened during the filming of this at that point in the history of Bangalore was, I think people were actually forced to think about multiple things. Because they quickly realized it's not this or that. You know, the street vendors connected to the metro and what's happening with the road widening and loss of someone else's house. So they're all. Gautam, do you want to come in?
No, I mean, I just wanted to say, I mean, we have got the stories of street vendors and of someone whose home is broken down. So there are many people who fall below a certain wage income level whose stories are documented in the film. I just wanted to say one small thing about the trees. Actually, unlike the stereotypical idea that we have that it's only the rich who are, or the middle class activists who are concerned about trees, a lot of the poor are actually concerned about the trees. If they don't come out, it may be because they don't feel empowered enough to, and also they don't have time. I mean, you know, you're working day and night, and if you don't, then you don't eat at night. So you don't have the time to come out and join a protest, perhaps. But a lot of people, I mean, we've spoken to so many street vendors and so many auto drivers, and I don't know, a bunch of people who are not your typical environmental activists, and yet they are equally concerned about the loss of green and of shade. You know, where does a street vendor sit? The temperatures just shoot up. I mean, Bangalore is in general much cooler, but in a place like Delhi, it's of course Delhi is protected though, much more so than here by law.
And also one of the things that happened was when people talked about loss of trees, they also talked about loss of commons. And commons is very much related to people who are actually do not fit into that middle class categories, because most of working people in Bangalore are walkers. They walk to work. And if you have a tree, if you have a city shaved off all its trees, then how are people going? And I mean, the statistics to show that most people walk. They cycle, they walk, they take the bus, and then the metro is the last. Actually, if the bus is carrying 35 lakh people, the metro is carrying 4. And many people walk because they can't even afford bus charge. So trees are associated with common spaces, commons. Like earlier Bangalore used to be lined with mango and tamarind trees, for instance, on the large roads, which are now become ring roads. So lack of trees is also lack of commons, which is also produce. So it's very much linked to women, and it's also linked to very non-middle class issues. So I think it's just wanted to say that. And many people were aware of this when they suggested alternatives, and they looked at trees not only as something that was feeding our lungs, but, you know, in terms of biodiversity, animals, people who walked under their shade, you know, just the whole gamut of things that greenery does. So I think a lot of people are many of the activists were very aware of all of this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think Malini is here. She's given more like an observation. Malini, are you here? I'll just read out what she said, that she thinks that the city is more of a space for the city corporate and not the citizens, right? And that's what she felt, she feels now. Because for people who've been here for 40, 50 years, they're being displaced, alienated from the city. And the people here don't feel they have a voice in the planning of the city. Now it doesn't feel like the development, quote unquote, is for the residents of Bengaluru. It's more for the profits for the companies who are coming into Bengaluru or who are already here, either as real estate or, you know, IT companies. So especially the outer ring road, I keep traveling a lot along this line because Sandhya lives there, and we've been working together on a couple of environmental issues. And it's so different from where I live, which is Jayanagar, where I'm surrounded by 3 metro lines. So I've probably not seen it from 2008, from when you, the filmmakers, have seen it, but I've heard of these matters in the news, because I've not lived here during the last 10 years continuously, but I came back a few years ago. And I see that there were 3 metro lines: the Green Line, which is operational, the upcoming RV Road, Bomanhalli line, and the Nagavara Gotigere line, which is going across Bannerghatta. And I've heard that it can even be connected to the zoo someday. You know, maybe they think the tigers of the zoo want to hop into the metro. I'm not sure. So, but none of us are consulted. And that feels so true at every segment. Like, I think I would qualify as an upper middle class person being in Jayanagar. I have the green cover. I have, you know, the best of the malls here, as well as street vendors. But when I go on the outer ring road, it doesn't look like my city anymore. It's a city which has happened in the last 20, 30 years. And maybe alienating them from this city, right? By giving them the best roads and the fast roads and telling them now that, you know, you'll get the metro so that you're not stuck in traffic is the thing to do. They're dividing us on different levels of thinking, right? Making us feel this is the solution to your problem, not allowing us to collaborate. This has been a wish, Sandhya and I just spoke about it, that we, just like we got the filmmakers today, we want to talk to all the activists who've been in the movie. We'll get their contacts. We already know a couple of them, and we want to speak to them about today and what they feel about then and now. What do you think of this idea, Usha?
That's a good idea.
Like a reunion of our Metropolis. Like Friends had a reunion, our Metropolis will have a reunion.
So during our first screening, which was at Everest Theatre in Frasertown, we had a lot of the activists actually come on stage or come up in front of the audience, and they were asked many questions too. This was way back in 2014, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was 15, I don't remember.
14 December.
Yeah, 14.
Yeah. So especially all the other lines are already coming up, right? The metro line on the outer ring road, we recently had bus space put up so that the buses can go faster. We had cycle tracks put up. So they've been doing a lot of things to improve the traffic situation. But now the metro comes on top of all this. And we know, having lived here in the heart of the metro construction and still living close to it, that when the metro comes, everything else goes for a toss. It's literally like a war zone. Yeah. So I think it disrupts normal life for a long time, which is the construction phase. And what you have, you probably aspire to have it at the end of 5 to 6 years. Maybe with practice, metros learn to shorten that phase and do it better or something. But then there's only a certain timeline in which you can accelerate construction, right? So this is what we hear in the news, right? Land acquisition is complete, approvals are done, funding is done. So it will be done in 2 years. So 2021, 2025, right, Sandhya? What is the Outer Ring Road completion date?
2025.
2025. So the promise is by 2025, it will be completed, the line to the metro airport. And soil testing has started.
Give or take 4 or 5 years.
Yes, yes.
And then,
sorry. And then I just wanted to ask, the underground sections have not come in this line. It's all overhead, right? Because underground takes longer. So from your experience, I just wanted to hear, what were people thinking, right? You know, why did it go underground? Was it to save, according to them, you know, heritage structures on top? What was the promises of people who were, you know, in authority at that time? Why were they going underground, not overground in some parts?
Gautam, you want to go?
No, go ahead.
So it was underground only in the Chickpet area. It's only the Chickpet line that was underground because of Tipu's palace and that whole area in Victoria Hospital, that area. Actually, the metro very clearly at that point said that it is more expensive to go underground. The rock is harder, and therefore we will not go underground. But if you look at Calcutta, you look at Delhi, most of it is underground. So one of the counters to that assertion was that, and this is something that makes sense to us also, that why put the metro overground in MG Road? The first line came up, and so it is also about optics. So an overground metro signal is there, and everyone can see it, and it becomes an object of fascination. And so one is it's extremely visible. Thirdly, it develops a lot of real estate. It was one of the things that is there is the metro was seen as a mutation corridor. So real estate develops along and the values go up and FSRs go up. So there is, so it's not, I think that there are a whole bunch of complex reasons why it's overground and not underground. And of course, some place, we don't know what's going to happen around Tannery Road. But that Gotigere line is going underground towards Fraser Town. It's all underground. And some of the densest parts of the city also. But in the initial phase, they were very clear that they wanted it overground. And I think it's also partly, of skimming over the city. And Delhi, it's just the opposite.
Yeah, there was talk that it was 3 times as expensive to go underground. But, the overground is highly undercosted.
Right.
Again, we haven't ourselves done the calculations, but going by the calculations that many of the activists did. And it's undercosted because, the land on which those pillars stand, and it's not just that one pillar or the pillars, but it's, there's a surrounding area that has to be taken by the metro. So all of that oftentimes is just public land for which there's no money paid. So, that's not declared as part of the cost. The trees that are cut are not declared as part of the cost. And in any case, even if it is more expensive to go underground, surely it is a larger number of people who should be taking that decision, not only the metro officials. So, yeah, I mean, there's both issues. There's one of undercosting, and then the second thing of who's taking the decision and why.
And also and what happens to the area around the metro line. The coming up of new buildings and higher buildings, sort of the gentrified corridor that comes along. And we don't have to go far. Just look at MG Road today and MG Road 2000. Most of them are now all branded shops. All the local shops have gone. Or CMH Road is a classic example. CMH Road. What happened?
BMRCL today has made it a part of their business plan to say that they will monetize on the real estate which comes up. They've actually said that if they're running on losses, they will just pick up the real estate and keep converting it for things. So that's one of the questions we have. So are they a transportation company or a real estate company? So yeah, Asha has left, but then she's saying, thank you for interesting discussion. I'll keep myself updated. And if possible, stop the metro. Do you think, hope this will be possible? So Adesh, are you there, or shall I read out your question? You've asked again, he's an
hi.
Yeah, do you want to ask of the, because it's there on the chat. Yeah, but you can speak.
So hi, I'm Adesh. I'm so quick about myself. I'm a physics undergrad, and I just do my part of activism whenever I can. So my question is, so while drawing the metro plan and construction, while drawing parallels from the metro plan and construction from the decade ago and to now, so one thing is, currently there's about 5,000 trees that is to be cut on the outer ring road from the Silk Board to the airport for the metro, right? And if you really look into it, that metro line plan is not the most feasible plan in terms of the total cost of it, the civil engineering, or the ease of travel that results out of it. The cost of travel for a normal man, and of course the environment. So question is it a fantasy to think that we can get the government to scrap the complete airport metro line, or do you think it's possible?
Is this addressed to both of us or someone else? Or?
I'm not, it's a general question. I'm not sure. You can give your inputs.
So Adesh is an activist who's been working on, he started off with Fridays for Future. He's been collaborating with a lot of groups, and I know him, and he's been looking at the airport line. Together, we've done a couple of Rickies on that stretch. So, I mean, this is just a question he had, and I said, why don't you just throw it into the audience as well as some filmmakers? Asha also coincidentally says, you know, do you think we can even stop the metro line? Because yes, it sounds like a dream now, fantasy, but given what we have in the past, right? Vidya, would you like to answer after Gautam and Usha? Please do, Gautam and Usha.
Well, so I'm not
actually... Or you can make a film on Adesh trying to stop the metro.
I don't know if I am equipped to answer that question. It really, I mean, I don't know if anybody can answer that conclusively, because it's a whole movement that happens that, and it depends on the course.
I don't think any of us are equipped, but I think the endeavor will be to see that the metro is more like citizen-centric, at least in terms of the Bangalorean. And, well, the bigger issues we will never know. But, your film, yes, Usha?
No, go ahead.
So your film had, the struggle of the Paura Karmikas, which hasn't ended. It just continues. And more recently, the same AICCTU was having this online meeting where the Paura Karmikas were really saying that what use is the metro when this whole pandemic is on? And why are they spending so much of public money and loan amounts on the metro?
Yes.
And why not on just seeing that we have a better system of healthcare, that the Paura Karmikas are actually looked after, get their due wages. Instead, the same wage theft that you talked of so many years ago still continues. And I haven't personally seen a Paura Karmika in Bangalore, and they are very articulate, they're very confident, but I don't see them using Nama Metro. So I haven't ever seen one of them using it, and I'm not so sure that they or their children actually use the metro. So who is this metro for? So I think all of us need to sort of fashion this metro into really becoming Nama Metro, or to just stop. Don't keep cutting up the city and our idea of the city.
So can we stop the metro again? To come back to this, it's a larger scheme of envisioning a country with metro in every city. And actually, I was at one meeting where somebody, an official, said whether you like it or not, a city will get a metro, whether the city wants it or not. So the metro is linked very intimately with a certain idea of what the urban is, and it also actually produces a certain kind of city, which we've talked about in our film. So I'm not going to say any more about that. So that is one thing. Secondly, this you said something about transporting. The tree transplanting has not worked very well.
Transplantation of the trees.
It's not worked very well, because they tried it in MG Road and the failure rate is very high. And even after we filmed after we finished the film, we were at a meeting, Gautam and I were at a meeting where the intent of the meeting was to ask the metro, where have you replanted? There was no conclusive answer. So that is that. And so who uses the metro? It is very expensive. It's minimum 20 rupees, 15 rupees for a short ride. It's very expensive. And actually, the ridership is not meant for Vanajama and her children. It's not meant for that. So that's a whole other discussion. But can we stop the metro? I don't know. Because I think it's part of a plan, and it's a special purpose vehicle, as they call it, where there's, shareholders are also the state and central government. And so I don't know. We can only try and push for more transparency, consultation, And because people are willing to give alternatives even back then, but nobody wanted to listen.
I just want to react to something that Sandhya has put out, that 13 acres are being leased by the metro to IKEA. I mean, that's an astonishing thing. I had no idea, because earlier, the real estate aspect of it, or the commercial space aspect of it, was limited to the station, giving small shops and, for travelers when they come in and they go out. But that the metro, which is a transportation company, supposedly is leasing out 13 acres to a furniture company is an astonishing fact to me. I mean, that's now 12 years down the line. I do want to sound a slightly hopeful note to say that can you stop the metro? I don't know whether this particular line can be stopped. I'm sure that, realignments do happen because of public protest, and certain things are stopped, such as all the road widening that was supposed to take place did not happen. And at least a part of that credit goes to all the protests that happened. And in any case, if there aren't any public protests, what else do we have? So you better hope that they do work.
Yeah. And plus with the airport line, the whole lobby that is working with Sanjeev and company who've been working with the suburban rail, which is cheaper and fast and accessible to a whole bunch of people. So anyway, so I suppose one has to lobby with people like that also. And people who are working on those issues of, a lot can be said about who the metro is for, but that will be another whole discussion. So
we did have Sanjeev in a previous session along with Raj Dugar, who spoke about how the suburban rail to metro, that corridor alone seems to have suddenly been deprioritized after the metro airport corridor has been announced, right? So in not so many words, so there is no official letter which deprioritizes, but it says you should prioritize the other lines. And they're not talking about the airport line, which was originally supposed to be completed by 2023. So I think we need to really question that. Why should metro be the monopoly, right? You can have trains, you can have the Volvos, the buses which are going to the metro, the red buses which go all the way to Devanhalli. Why did that get deprioritized over the Volvos? See, the alternatives are there, but there is a subtle positioning and pushing for monopoly. And that's there. So I think Ankur says, this lease is also to justify metro use so that more people would use the metro just to go to IKEA. I think that's happened in Hyderabad. I've been in Hyderabad. I went to the IKEA. In fact, I used the metro because it was the easiest way to get there. So it's probably a business plan of IKEA and the metros, international lobbies.
Yeah, and let's not go that far. The overhead metro lines are linked to the malls. The Malleshwaram line, for instance, all the other lines will be linked to malls.
Yeah, you have Central Mall in my area.
And so it is actually part of the plan. And real estate, there's a whole department in the metro that looks after real estate.
Yes.
And so the real estate is, and one of the things with the overhead metro is that there is, so, and even in Delhi, there's scholars who've done work on this, actually. There are no films made, but so, and I think Leo, Gautam mentions it in the film.
This kind of leasing has not happened. No, he mentions the development, private development.
Development along the corridor.
But that the metro has acquired this huge amount of land which they can then lease out is something that.
But then there is
Sorry,
go ahead.
No, we have on tape, I think, the metro chief saying that no, we're not going to have any shops on the station. And those, we're talking of small shops like kiosks, and now we hear that 13 acres are being leased out. It's astonishing. We should try and pull out that bit and give it to all of you if we have it. I'm not sure.
And in the film also, that elderly gentleman asks him that I heard, it's there in the paper. He says, "You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong." So,
Thank you so much. I think it was wonderful talking to you, Usha and Gautam. I will certainly go back and watch the film again because now you've extended the time. people are just thanking us for organizing this session. Yes, if you'd like to continue to be involved, please leave your name and contact email or phone number if you'd like. Sandhya has also put in a Google form. I'll put that again down here. Thank you so much for sharing both the movie as well as your time for this session. And we hope to continue to...
I think Bala TM has put an important line, Rajni, which you should read. It's basically intergenerational equity also, that principle that he brings in.
Yeah, if we can't stop projects in progress or in the pipeline, can we think of a way to stop the city planners to at least keep our concerns in mind in the long term? What do you think we can do from your experience in making this film? He wants to say. We should at least have a better place for our children and grandchildren. Personally, I feel you can't stop it once it comes. It's like the JCB or the bulldozer comes, the machine overpowers the people, right? So I think planning is when we can intervene. And with Metro, we see that the tree is the last thing, right? It's like, it's the end stage that we're getting involved. When we hear of the trees being cut or the building being demolished, we're not being involved in the planning stages. We're not being told upfront. And that is a concern. So if you're really concerned about intergenerational equity, like the indigenous people do, we need to be thinking of at least 7 generations down the line. But here we are building up around the existing line and then say, oh, it's congested, so let's just get a metro. Let's just get, some more road expansion done. That's my view as an activist, that we can't have it all. We can't have them have their way and save the planet for the future generations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Sandhya, any last word from you? Gautam, Usha?
No, just thank you for organizing it. Thank you, everybody, for coming, asking your questions, patiently hearing us, watching the film.
And thank you. And those who haven't watched, please do watch. And thanks. And this is great. Whatever one has learned so far about what you all are doing is wonderful, and happy to collaborate. And thank you for inviting us. And yeah, and let's keep the channel open.
Yes, Usha. Thank you so much.
We think, we from Growthwatch, thank you for making that film, because really it's a wonderfully made film also, together with bringing up the issues and saying it like we think, but you've knitted it together so well and so beautifully visually also. So thank you for that. Really. And I'm so glad that so many more can watch it with you opening it up for a couple of days more. Thank you. Thank you.